I'm Jessica Parker, and I did my senior project over witchcraft and the modern world. My guiding questions are: what is witchcraft in the modern sense? What rules must modern witches follow? What are some pagan holidays? What are some aspects that paganism shares with other modern religions? And what types of modern magic are there? When you think of a witch, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Cats.
A witch hat. Powers. Yeah. So for most people, it's the green face and the crooked nose and the hat and the evil cackle. A lot of people think it's satanic or evil or make-believe is the big one. The main point of my presentation is to show you that it's not any of those things. So what is witchcraft? And it's a study of magic. And magic, in the modern sense of the word, is the channeling of energy towards a specific goal, or the textbook definition of magic is the change of any condition by ritual means. The word witch stems from the Anglo-Saxon word witchet, which means wise, but this is kind of subjective. Some practitioners of the craft, which is kind of a shorthand term for witchcraft, they prefer to be called sorcerers, warlocks, mages, or any sort of word like that. This is a quote from one of my books. The craft is not evil. The true practitioners understand that the craft is accepting, generous, and loving. So, like, a lot of people think it's evil or satanic. It's not satanic at all. For it to be satanic, you would have to be, to some degree, Christian or believe in Christianity, and most witches don't. They're by and large pagan. What rules must modern witches follow? There are a lot, which I thought was kind of interesting, because I never knew that. There's the rule of three, which is the most basic one. It's also called the karmic law, which basically states that every action or deed, positive or negative, is then tripled and sent back to us. So as an example, if I were to throw a rock at Jewel, then the universe would send the equivalent of 3 rocks back at me, whether literally or figuratively. The same goes for good deeds. Like if I were to give someone a piece of chocolate, the universe would give me the equivalent of 3 pieces of chocolate. Witches believe in the universe's form of checks and balances. So for everything in the world, there is an equal opposite. It's like yin yang, male, female, day, night, dark, light, good and evil, stuff like that. There's the Wiccan Rede, which is a very, very long set of rules that frankly, it wouldn't have fit in the presentation. But the most important part of it is the last line, and it's 8 words the Wiccan Rede fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will. Which basically means that as long as I'm not harming anyone, as long as I'm not harming myself, other people, the planet, or anything like that, I can do what I want as a witch. There's the 4 powers of the Magus: to know, to dare, to will, and to keep silent. To know, we must keep our minds clear of useless clutter. To dare, we must dare to overcome personal ignorance. To will, we must have personal will or our magic is pretty much useless. And then to keep silent, it kind of has a double meaning. You have to keep your mind silent. You have to have inner peace and silence. And then that kind of goes hand in hand with the Salem witch trials and the negative connotation that witchcraft is seen in. Because if you tell the wrong person that you're a witch, you can be persecuted horribly. When I was growing up, my mother always told me, don't tell anyone, or they'll do something to you, they'll bully you, they'll hurt you, because it's seen very, very poorly. Even this year, I was talking to a couple of my friends, and a girl at my table, who I hadn't really seen before, I hadn't really met her or talked to her before, asked me if I did human sacrifices. No, that's against the Wiccan Rede. That's harming others. Pagan holidays. This is another line of the Wiccan Rede. When the wheel begins to turn, let the Beltane fires burn. When the wheel hath turned to Yule, light the log and left hand roll. So this, I was so happy I made it spin. This is the 2019 pagan wheel of holidays. Some of them do change because these are the Sabbats and these are based on solstices and equinoxes. So those change from year to year. We have Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, Litha, I can't pronounce that one, so we usually just call it Lammas, Mabon, and Samhain. And I'm sure some of you will recognize some of these, like Samhain's a big one. The most recent one was Beltane. Actually, that was yesterday. Oops. There are two types of pagan holidays, two main ones. There are the Esbats, which are minor celebrations of the moon. Most witches usually celebrate every full moon, but you can celebrate every lunar cycle. There are 13 months in a lunar year, so there are 13 Esbats every year. Occasionally there are 14 if there's a blue moon. Then the Sabbats are the 8 major festivals that make up the wheel that we just saw. They celebrate the changing of the seasons, so equinoxes and solstices. Those are the major festivals, the most important ones. Some of them go for a day, a couple days. There's one, I think Lammas goes for a month because it's a harvest festival. Similar holidays. There are a lot of similar holidays shared by paganism and Christianity, and I found this was really interesting. So Yule is very similar to Christmas, Ostara is similar to Easter, and Samhain is very similar to Halloween. The historical context behind that is because when the church was taking control of these smaller pagan communities, they would move their holidays to match up with pagan holidays, and they would build their churches on pagan worship grounds to make it easier for the local people to become Christian. That's also why we celebrate Christmas in December, when historically speaking, Jesus would have been born sometime in July, I believe. There are a lot of types of modern magic. I focus on 4 that I think based on like pop culture you guys would recognize more. So there's divination. That's magic used to peer into the future and see what lies ahead. Most witches use some form of divination. They rely heavily on the use of tarot cards, runes, tea leaves, scrying, and pendulum work is a big one. Personally, I use tarot cards because they're easier to deal with, and runes. The tea leaves actually go back all the way to ancient Greece. It wasn't tea leaves, but I think it was bay leaves, and it would, based on how the leaves would flip in the wind, would tell you if you were going to have a boy or a girl, if you were pregnant, or something like that.
What is scrying?
Like crystal ball type.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Folk magic is magic that is passed down in cultures since before its origin can be traced. It's the magic of the common folk. It's spontaneous and involves chants, gestures, and natural items. A lot of heritage-based items. A lot of people who kind of study magic seem to confuse this with stuff involving fae or fairy magic. It's not the same thing, unless you're Irish, then it's very heavily the same thing. But this is not the same thing, because I think that the misconception comes from, they call them fae folk, but this is just folk magic. It's the same sort of thing that, like, if you're sick and your grandmother has this superstition that you have to do this certain thing, eat this certain thing, and then say these words. That's kind of a version of folk magic. There's petition magic, and it very closely resembles prayer. They're not the same thing, obviously, but it's the petitioning of some higher power to grant your desire. The main point with this form of magic is to ask, don't command. And when you're performing petition magic, you have to be prepared to take no as an answer. Again, it's not prayer, it's not anything like that, and you have to expect an answer in the form of an omen or just a straight answer in the dream form. And then this one is the one most of you will recognize the most. It's sympathetic magic, and it's the use of an object to represent someone to the point that they are linked to that object. Whatever happens to the object then happens to the person. Most people associate voodoo dolls with negative connotations. Voodoo dolls are a form of sympathetic magic. Though viewed as mostly negative, its main use is for healing and blessings of prosperity, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a doll. The actual term for that, for voodoo dolls, they're called puppets, but you could use a picture, a lock of hair for that person. But a lot of the negative connotations for voodoo actually stem from racism towards a lot of like Haitian people and people of color. So it's not negative at all. It's mostly used for healing. Just like any form of magic, it can be used negatively. So, I don't know what to say.
Oh my gosh, that was so interesting.